What's up, YouTube? This is the Serial Thriller Broadcast, and today I'm going to be talking about Psycho. That explains the black and white. Psycho, as everyone probably knows, came out in 1960 and is directed by Alfred Hitchcock. It stars Anthony Perkins and Vera Miles. So this movie has a fairly simple story. A secretary steals $40,000 and goes on the run, and she ends up at the Bates Motel where she meets Norman Bates, which is unlucky for her. So a lot of people will call this movie the original slasher flick. It kind of kicked off a whole series of movies that would come after it and would be influenced by this movie, like Halloween, Friday the 13th, even Nightmare on Elm Street, Silence of the Lambs, all those movies. And it was Hitchcock's first attempt at horror, actually. So what I want to talk about is kind of what makes this movie a classic. So the first thing I'll say is a lot of the storyboarding and the graphic design and the poster work was done by a guy named Saul Bass. So that shower scene that everyone talks about that's so iconic was actually kind of put to paper at first by this guy, which is a large part of why this movie is so iconic when the woman gets stabbed in the shower. The second thing I think that makes this movie so good is Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates. He's just an actor who I think was around before his time. Like, I watched this movie, and out of everyone in it, I kind of mentioned this on the radio when I was talking about this movie. A lot of times when I watch older movies, it feels like a lot of the actors have the same sort of tones to their voice. It almost seems like it comes from stage acting. They have similar tones, they have sort of very flourishy movements, things like that. Whereas this guy had a very subtle and very sort of nuanced performance. And I think that it still holds up today. Like, he's just super creepy throughout the entire movie. But at the same time, he makes you feel a little bit sorry for him. And that's part of the reason why you can almost relate to him and you're almost rooting for him at some points. The third thing I think that contributed to this movie being a classic is the musical score, which is that thing I tried to do a terrible imitation of earlier. And really, you'll see it parodied countless times over the next 55 years. You know, there's just people still hear that sound now, and they might not know what it's from, but it's from this movie. That sort of shrieking score that comes in when anything is happening that involves a lot of tension and suspense on the screen. So yeah, I bought this movie, and if for no other reason, it's because it's 55 years old, and it still manages to capture my attention enough for me to sit through the whole thing, which is something I can't really say for a lot of other movies that I've seen that are of this age or older. If you haven't seen it yet, it's probably worth checking out, just especially if you're a horror fan or a suspense fan, because you'll kind of see where a lot of the tropes have come from, because it was no doubt inspiration for a lot of the movies that came after it. This has been the Serial Thriller Broadcast, and if you feel thrilled, chilled, and fulfilled, hit the subscribe button and let me know what you thought in the comments below.